I basically just had a pretty bad experience and I kind of want to talk about it by the off chance that it helps somebody who recently has gone through the same thing, or if it helps you if you ever end up going through the same thing as well, which I hope you don't. Basically, a long time ago, I got a therapist, and my therapist has been phenomenal. He has helped me learn a lot about myself and how I process things, and honestly, I feel like the growth has been super worth it, and I can't recommend it enough. However, while talking to my therapist, we got more and more into the way that I process things and the way that I do things, and we found out that a lot of the things that I do are very tied in with ADHD. After a lot of discussion, I ended up deciding why not go and see an actual psychiatrist to see if there was a reason why so many things were the way they were. The thing about getting a psychiatry appointment in the US is that if you're going through your normal insurance, sometimes it takes a very long time. Me personally, I had to make 4 or 5 phone calls and then wait about a month and a half to get to the final boss / psychiatry man. But I was excited nonetheless, and I counted down the days until I could finally see my psych. Now here is where things hit the fan, in a very unpleasant way. Anyways, I finally talked to my psychiatrist on the phone after getting led around by the nose for a month and a half or so, and I tell him about my life, I tell him about the stuff I've been dealing with, etc., etc. And as he was sitting there listening to me, I told him, I've been fired from every job that I've ever had in my life. I used to get made fun of as a kid because my legs honestly can't sit still when I'm in a chair. I'm very, very scatterbrained, which makes scheduling my life a mess because I just tend to forget things and end up missing out on a lot. The list goes on, but anyways, I'm talking to my psychiatrist and he cut me off and he said, "Hey, I don't mean to have a gotcha moment with you here, but we found THC in your urine." It's not something I thought about much because, yes, I've taken edibles to sleep before. I mean, I don't think there's anyone in California who doesn't. But regardless, he tells me, "Hey, you have THC in your system, and since you have THC, I can't diagnose you with ADHD because THC can make you feel like you have ADHD." Obviously, I was kind of upset here, but he's the guy who knows what he's talking about because he's a psychiatrist. So he kind of talked to me for a bit, and he said a lot of things that, looking back at it now, were very, very mean. One of the things he said was that everybody wants ADHD nowadays because it's the cool thing to have, so he doesn't think I have ADHD. Another fun thing that he said was because I'm a YouTuber and I'm relatively successful at it, there's no way that I could have ADHD because it would have made me not able to become a YouTuber. And then he brought up the fact that a lot of people get ADHD medication and ADHD diagnoses in order to sell the medication. But I don't know if you know this. I make a lot of money off of YouTube. So why would I risk all of that to sell ADHD medication? Regardless, I don't know. He said a lot of mean things and I had a very bad experience with him. But I told him, because again, I still had faith in this guy because he's the one who knows what he's talking about. I told him, what do I have to do for us to have this conversation again and prove that there's, no THC in my blood or whatever? Because again, I don't care about THC. I've taken an edible to sleep every now and again. It does not matter to me. He says, you got to wait 5 weeks. And then after 5 weeks, we can have another discussion on the phone and then we could actually give you a proper diagnosis. Okay, cool, whatever. I'll wait another month and a half in order to talk to you again with no THC in my blood so that we could have a real discussion. The 5 weeks pass and they were a pretty slow 5 weeks. I'll be honest, when I found out all the symptoms of ADHD and I started drawing parallels with the struggles that I had in my life, and in everything that I do, I just really wanted to know if there was something up, but I still waited the 5 weeks, obviously didn't take THC again, etc., etc., and I excitedly waited for the day to come. The second time, me and him finally talked, and I was excited because I thought he was going to treat me with a newfound respect now that there was no THC in my system. The first thing this guy does is he calls me Ricardo. That is not my name. And that's kind of funny, I'll be honest. But we end up having a discussion on the phone, and he tells me, "How are you doing?" And I tell him, "You know what, Doc? I'm doing exactly the same. I took your words to heart. There's no THC in my system. Now can we finally talk about what we're trying to talk about?" And he goes, "You're doing a lot better now that you don't have THC in your system." And I go, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, you're just doing better now that there's no THC in your system." And I go, "Hey, I don't mean to barge in here, but I never said those words. I don't know where you're getting this idea that I'm magically better now, because that is not something I said. And then he goes, and as long as you don't have THC in your system, you're going to continue to do better. And I very obviously got pretty upset here. I flat out told him, I was like, look, it sounds like you're not listening to me. I spent 2 months to talk to you once, and then you made me wait another month and a half to talk to you again, and it just feels like you're not listening to me. And he goes, yeah, well, from what I know, it just sounds like you don't got ADHD. And I know I'm rambling here, but it's for a reason, okay? And I gotta get it out too, because I'm still a little pissed about it. But long story short, he re-emphasizes the fact that everyone wants ADHD. Everyone wants to be an ADHD person today. And then he also emphasizes, hey, Scooch, you're successful, so there's no way you've had to deal with ADHD in your life. And the whole time I'm kind of like angry. I'm upset because I kind of felt very invalidated, especially after the months leading up to it, where I kind of finally felt like I had an answer to what I've been dealing with my whole life. But anyways, I tell him flat out, I'm like, look, you're not listening to me. I don't know what it takes. And I told him flat out, I said, what is it going to take? And he says, you know what? We're going in circles. We can refer you to someone else. And he hangs up on me. And I was honestly very upset. But I was also disappointed because I felt like I was finally getting an answer to such a very big question in my life. For the reason that I got fired from every single job that I've ever had. Or why streaming for more than 2 hours is very hard for me because I get physically uncomfortable sitting in a chair because I feel like I have to be moving. Or even why I cut people off and finish their sentences because I always feel like I gotta fast forward things. I was pretty down in the dumps about it. I went and I talked to my girlfriend Reb, and she said, hey, why don't you try going out of network and talking to a new psychiatrist? Because it sounds like you had a nightmare experience. And honestly, I kind of didn't want to. I'm sure you can tell, but that experience was a little traumatizing. It made me almost lose faith in it all because it was just such a bad person to deal with. But still, I went out of network the next day and I talked to another psychiatrist, and this time I obviously had to pay because it was out of network. But this time it was a world of difference. Whereas my first psychiatrist was doing everything in their power to kind of dissuade me or negate what I'm saying or invalidate my words, my second psychiatrist listened to me, let me finish my sentences, asked how things went and how they affected me. And honestly, it almost made me cry because I finally felt validated. I know it sounds dumb to make a video like this, but the reason why I'm even bringing it up is because I almost gave up. Having to wait about 3 months to be led by the nose only to talk to a very, very unsavory person was almost enough to make me not try again. But thankfully, because of my girlfriend being able to convince me otherwise, I was able to get up and work up the courage and see another psychiatrist. And of course, the big reveal here is that it turns out that yes, I do have ADHD. And it has kind of changed my life in a very, very big way. And I got prescribed something for it, and the day that I took it, I cried. And the reason that I cried is because I always wondered why I could not do what everyone else could. I always wondered why I would zone out in classes, or why I would mentally check out in the middle of sentences, or why it was so uncomfortable for me to sit down for longer than an hour. And finally, having an answer to all of that, it is a form of relief that I honestly can't even begin to explain. And it shows in my work, it shows in my content. My streams are now like 7 hours plus because I don't physically get uncomfortable sitting in my chair, and the list goes on and on and on. Which leads us back to the beginning. The reason why I'm making this video is because I looked it up, and it turns out that this happens a lot. Believe it or not, there are a lot of people who lack the bedside manners it takes to actually talk you through things, and a lot of those people unfortunately happen to be psychiatrists. If you're somebody who has tried before but things went very badly, or if you're just somebody who's afraid to try, take it from me. I just kind of want to stand here as an example that 1, it does make a huge difference. 2, there's nothing wrong with it. And 3, sometimes it takes more than one try. I know it's a very specific video, and I'm just kind of throwing this out there, and I've been wondering on how to make this video forever, but it's a very serious thing, and I hope to God this video helps in any way it can. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say. I hope you have a wonderful night. Adios.